This next section that we're going to look at in the grade 7 science unit, heat and temperature, is about how heat affects the volume of solids, liquids, and gases. Back when we were talking about what matter is, we talked about how matter has mass, so you can weigh it, but it also takes up space. Okay, and so here we're going to look at volume, that space that matter takes up, and we're going to look at how heat affects the volume. And this, again, this isn't a new concept. This is about expansion and contraction. So about heating things, causing them to expand, and then cooling them and causing them to contract, and exactly what's going on, in particular regarding their particles. Okay, so let's take a look at some of our stuff here. It says that volume is the amount of space that something takes up. Okay, so the amount of space that something takes up, and like most things, you can measure it, and we'll typically measure volume, and you can measure it in milliliters. You can measure it in centimeters cubed. There's various ways. Typically, anything cubed, a distance cubed. Anyways, so it's taking up space. So when the volume of an object increases, it's due to an increase in thermal energy. Okay, so that means it's getting warmer. So if something is gaining thermal energy, that means it's getting warmer. Okay, it will expand. So the opposite is also true. If the volume is decreasing, and it's going to decrease, for our purposes right now, we'll say it's going to decrease because there's a thermal energy is being taken away, or it's being lost. Okay, so it's getting cooler. It's getting more cold. Okay, so that is when something will contract. Okay, now we're going to just go to a fresh page here. So here's a metal cube, we'll say. It's three-dimensional. I'm not going to put, well, sure, I'll put the 3 dimensions in there. Okay, so it's a metal cube. And for simplicity, I'm going to draw in 9 particles. And of course, we know that there's way, way more particles than that. Okay, and we're going to heat this baby up. Okay, so there's a little bit of heat. Whoosh. Ooh, it's like it's coming to life. Okay, and when we heat that up, I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit. That cube, as you know, it expands. Okay, so there's our cube. Okay, and this is what happens to the particles. Actually, I'm going to stop there, and I want you to think about, remember SPAM, what happens to those particles? What's going to happen here? Okay. This is what it will look like. So what do you notice about this diagram, about what I'm drawing here in the larger cube, in that expanded metal cube? Well, first of all, this is really important. Those particles aren't any bigger, because particles don't increase in size when you heat a material. But what does get bigger? That's right, the space in between the particles. The space in between the particles is what gets larger. So if we weighed this, let's say this weighed 25 grams, we heated it up, it gets bigger. How much will it weigh? It's going to weigh 25 grams. It doesn't increase in mass because we're not adding anything to it. Heat doesn't weigh anything, it's energy. Okay? But it does get bigger. It gets bigger because the space in between the particles actually gets bigger, nothing else. Okay? And the opposite is true, right? If we had a material and we cooled it somehow, let's put some air conditioning on it, right? Those particles would, I should say the cube itself will contract. Okay? And when it contracts, again, the particles don't get any smaller, but the space between those particles gets smaller. Okay? Now, this is going to happen in a solid like what I've shown you. Excuse me. It also happens in a liquid, and it also happens in a gas. Happens in all states of matter. What you can do if you want to go on the web, on the internet, search up expanding gases or expanding solids or expanding liquids, like any one of those, and I'm sure there's some videos kicking around. Okay, so that is expanding and contracting. When something expands, its volume increases. When something contracts, its volume decreases. Okay?